Let's take a look at a sampling of what Trump has done for Russia just lately, and usually at the expense of American interests. There are many, but here's a top 10. 1. After Trump and Vice President Vance theatrically chastised the heroic Ukrainian President Zelensky in front of TV cameras in the Oval Office last year, Trump paused our weapons shipments to Ukraine. 2. In July, during the worst Russian bombing campaign of the war until that point, Trump paused an already funded weapons shipment for Ukraine, including the Patriot interceptors that protect civilians from Putin's savage attacks. 3. That same month, Trump's Treasury Department stopped imposing new sanctions and closing sanctions loopholes, effectively allowing dummy corporations to send funds, chips, and military equipment to Russia. Leaked phone calls show that White House envoy Steve Witkoff and Putin envoy Kirill Dmitriev have worked together closely behind the scenes on a peace deal favorable to Russia. 5. Last summer, Trump rolled out the presidential red carpet for the Russian dictator on American soil, with a summit in Alaska that yielded, unsurprisingly, no gains toward ending the war in Ukraine. 6. Trump's vice president traveled to the Munich Security Conference last year to parrot Russia's anti-Western talking points, pushed by right-wing groups that Putin has long funded and used to create political strife in Europe. 7. Trump installed Russia apologist Tulsi Gabbard as his director of national intelligence, much to the glee of Russian state media. 8. Upon the confirmation of Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice shuttered its anti-kleptocracy work that had successfully targeted Putin's Russian oligarchs. 9. Late last year, Trump unveiled a new so-called national security strategy, which abandoned traditional alliances in Europe and favored a transactional foreign policy that the Kremlin praised as, quote, largely consistent with Moscow's vision and desires. And 10, the Trump administration is even paving the way for Russia's return to global sports competition, ending its isolation in those arenas in the wake of the hostile Ukraine invasion and state-backed systemic doping programs in Russia. That's a top 10, but the list goes on.
Oh, wow. Well done.
It just, you know, that had to be the song this week. You know it did.
Perfect. God. Oh, that was one of your best. If there were awards given out for really small, awesome podcast intros, that would win a prize. Hi, everybody. I'm Heidi Kuda. I'm here with Jim Stewart's in High Fidelity, and that opener had so much going on, but one little teeny tiny footnote really stood out for me, and that was the underscoring of Howard Lutnick and Ponzi scheming. Because when Trump first came on my radar as a fraudster and a con man, it was because of his association with pyramid schemes and Ponzi schemes. And later on, after 2016, I would find out that the same Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes would always have Russian ties. But in 2006, I interviewed the victims of one of the Ponzi schemes he was associated with. It was called ACN, multi-level marketing, something about a video phone in the era when Skype was just starting off. It was so tragic because these guys read Art of the Deal. They thought that if they invested in something that Trump was backing, that they would really make their way and earn money. And instead, they, of course, were the marks. The money being earned, of course, was the life savings that the victims of these schemes put into it. And from the modeling to Trump, university, it was always done with that kind of pyramid scheming. So you just took me back there, man, to like how I got into this 20 years ago. And that was in talking to the victims of one of the schemes. Anyway, it was another slow news week. I don't know where to start, gentlemen.
When I was in Dublin and I was walking down an alley, there was a piece of graffiti on the wall that said, "I'd rather trust a drug dealer on a street corner than a polished thief in a three-piece suit." It just seems like that fits.
That's deep, man. On a total non sequitur, a Londoner who I met in County Galway told me that there's a famous quote that when America sneezes, Britain catches a cold. And I think we're seeing some of that, and we'll probably talk about some of that. But before we get into all the ugly stuff, I was just at a pub watching rugby.
Well,
And Irish.
what does Britain get if we shit all over ourselves?
What was that?
What does Britain get if we take a shit all over ourselves?
A cleaning bill. That's what they
As
get.
opposed to a cold. I mean, really, like what
Yeah.
the anyway.
But can
Carry
we
on.
just
I
talk
didn't mean to. I
for
was
1
just
second?
was like,
Just what
yeah,
I know,
cold.
I
I don't
know,
know, man. That's
I
not
know.
a sneeze.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we need to update. So thank you for that Sheldon Whitehouse opener. I think it's really, really important. Ruth Ben-Ghiat told us in Rise of Authoritarianism that people start memory holing a lot. It's kind of a policy to memory hole. Also, we're going to just be non sequiturs all tonight. I was thinking about something that Jason Stanley said in an interview with Perry Bacon Jr. this week for the New Republic, how Jason said that white supremacy is now the official policy of the US under Trump. And I was like, sometimes you just hear these things and you're just like, yeah, that's true. Man, that's awful to hear it. Anyway, I transcribed this interview that Jason did this week, and I encourage everybody to read it or watch the interview with Perry Bacon Jr. for the New Republic's Right Now podcast, because there was just so much incredibly succinct and useful information from the author of How Fascism Works, because he knows how it works. Okay, so that's enough with just like the random intro. Jim, why don't you kick us off? It was a really big week, and um, I have my perspective on it, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just it's not just white supremacy, right? It's also Christian supremacy. Those are the two official, which is the amazing part, right? We're now at the point where it's just normal that the government is white supremacist and Christian supremacist, not just as policy, but as murderous war crime policy, right? I mean, there's no other justification for this. The remarkable part about this war is, you know, Bush and Cheney and all those assholes took 2 years after the most traumatic terrorist act on American soil in history. Took 2 years after that to come up with an excuse for going into Iraq. It was a dumb excuse and all of that, but it fooled enough of us, me included, at least for a while, that, you know, we had to do this to defend ourselves. This motherfucker's just like, I don't like the Ayatollah's attitude. Really? There's nothing, the nuclear shit is not a thing, right? And let's also just remember in 2018, Iran had nothing, no nuclear, nothing in the entire country, and hadn't had it for 3 years. And Donald Trump was so, two things. There's two competing things. The white supremacy part is that Donald Trump couldn't stand anything that Obama did. Couldn't stand anything black man did. So this Iran deal was on the table from the beginning. And then the other important influence that, you know, is not talked about enough, but is being talked about more, is Bibi Netanyahu's magical power to influence. The fairy dust is amazing. If people don't remember, it was Netanyahu in 2018 who was running all kinds of propaganda, did a 20-minute PowerPoint presentation at Mossad headquarters to talk about how Iran had lied about stuff when the deal was done, like not actually saying that there was any nuclear program at all, but just that they had lied about it, and how dare they, and Obama got fooled. And that 7 fucking years ago, 8, is why we're here right now. So all of this is intentional. We can't, it's not even a Trump, one thing that Trump has done, and the Epstein files, really, together, right? Trump's totally disinhibited actions and what he says now, along with what we see for our own eyes in Epstein's files, show us the actual mentality behind not just the last decade, but, as I've been writing about a lot recently, the acidic slime that led up to where we are, right? That has been interfering with our fucking elections for years. Remember, why is Iran's theocratic government in there? Because they were assisted in the process by Reagan's campaign manager. All of this is we are watching the cycle of what Eisenhower warned us about in 1961, the military industrial complex. And now that military industrial complex is run by South African immigrants who bound together in the prospect of the great, easy to conquer American losers. And so they fucking waltzed in here and took over and found the most demented moron they could find on planet Earth. They love this. The problem that they're going to have, and this is maybe our only shot. Trump is fucking is deteriorating, man. This guy's not gonna last. I don't know how long, but dude is not functioning. He's slurring, he's mumbling. His disinhibition, meaning his ability to, like, in any way filter what he's always been that guy, right? Dementia never makes you a new person. It just makes you way more and increases certain qualities. And this guy just has the frontal lobes do not impact his thinking. And this is just a bananas dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Because we have, right, if it was just that guy. But we've got the white supremacy, but now he installed deliberately Hegseth and these lunatics leading the Pentagon who are, I don't know if you guys have seen the story about the Military Religious Freedom Foundation.
Yeah.
Is an advocacy group for military people who are concerned about religious, religion coming too much into the military, and they've been inundated with complaints from people saying, "My commander said, good news, we're about to start Armageddon."
Yeah.
Really? Like hundreds of these fucking guys are like, you guys, we're going to start the signal fire for Jesus in Iran, quote unquote. So we've got these, just bonkers people behind a completely degenerating man. And this I don't know, man, this is not a scenario that ends well.
No.
First of all.
Yeah.
But it is also not a scenario that seems to me to be controllable by the tech bros anymore. And one of the problems they're about to have is that the speaking of things sliding off a cracker, the economy is going to slide off a crack.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to fucking guys.
Yeah.
I've been telling you about this fucking bubble for a really long time.
Yeah.
And what's the best possible way to destroy it is to make oil prices.
Yeah.
Because these people rely, like, the energy is the whole thing. It's a whole thing. And these morons are making oil prices skyrocket. Now, what is one thing that, and I'll shut up, one thing that does do is really, really help one particular guy. One particular guy really helps a lot. Not Netanyahu. Yeah, it helps that guy too. But the other guy is Vladimir Putin.
Oh.
Who relies on oil prices being high in order to save his failing military operation.
Yeah.
And by the way, America isn't at war. We're in a combat operation.
Yeah.
All right, I'm done ranting now. You
Some kind of
asked.
special military operation. Thank you
Hold
for
on. What? Iran, the special military
special military
operation?
operation. No, I'm just quoting Putin from
Oh yeah.
20.
Oh,
So
or was that Trump?
a couple of things I want to say. Thank you, Jim, for that intro. Um, the two gentlemen beside me here have been telling you about how so much of the religious extremists have linked themselves with Trump because they believe that he will be the one to bring on the end times. This is something that Jim and High Fidelity are talking about for years. So to see this coming to fruition, it's like what Marci says. We're going to talk about our interview with Marci Shore in a minute. It's like she says, all your worst fears like just coming true, and like all these things that your therapist would say, what are you worried about that for? And it turns out, oh no, this is a real true horror story. So that's one piece of it. But what I have been thinking about, and of course I'm thinking about it because I'm traveling through Europe, so for me, uh, I see a big target of this to be all of the European leaders. And that was my initial, instinct right after the, war was, underway. I thought, oh, just like Joe Biden, became blamed for a war he didn't start, and they called him Genocide Joe, after 2023. I looked at this kind of playing field and said, oh, so who's going to be targeted? Well, you're going to get Starmer targeted. You're going to get the leader of Spain targeted. Macron's going to be targeted, all of them. So what happened like right afterwards, suddenly, you get headlines, oh, Starmer's no Winston Churchill because he did not want to sign up for any of this. And of course, Friedrich Merz shows up in the White House to show his allegiance, with his ally, and he sits there as Trump just bashes all the European leaders. So these guys are damned if they do, damned if they don't. And I believe this is a very swift and evil way to try to take down all the leaders of Europe in one fell swoop, because there is no winning in this at all. It's designed saying to wreak chaos and and to basically target, I think, the rest of the free world. So tell me I'm wrong, because I'd like to be.
I think, I mean, I'm going to be more stark. They are trying to Gaza certain parts of the world so that they can rebuild it, and that includes basically the United States, right? I mean, they're the sort of economic ruin being unleashed right now. Like, I just don't think people get it at all.
Wow.
And what are they doing in Iran? They're literally trying to turn it into Gaza so that Jared Kushner can come in and SimCity it. Have you guys seen like his PowerPoint presentation about what he's doing in Gaza? It's like he made AI make some science fiction fucking like and that is the attitude. It is destroy everything, extract the resources, ethnically cleanse it to be whatever culture you think is, should be there versus not, and install a surveillance state to enforce it. But there's a lot of things going wrong with it.
Yeah.
For example, 165 schoolgirls were murdered by an American bomb. There were murals on the fucking walls. It was not complicated intelligence, right? But the United States has been very boastful about how they've been using Palantir for all of these operations. Palantir, which uses chatbots to analyze all of its intelligence. That's why Gaza is Gaza right now, is because of lavender. Lavender is what they called, sorry to laugh, but it's what they called the project to destroy Gaza. And what you can imagine is, they're targeting, interface is this big sci-fi thing, and there's buildings and targeting and shit, and there's just crosshairs on every building. Because the project is to take it down. And so whether or not it was deliberate against the school or AI, just it's close, so let's blow that up too. Because that's what AIs do. They don't fucking know anything. That to me is the future that they're trying to force us into. And personally, I think it's backfiring in a lot of ways, and that process is going to be challenging across the board. Last thing, there are signs beyond just the Dow starting to crack and all of that. BlackRock, you guys might have heard of BlackRock, is now limiting withdrawals. It's having credit problems. BlackRock has trillions of dollars. If you have retirement accounts, you have BlackRock 100% of the time. Because this fucking idiot, Larry Fink, and all his dummies around him bought into the AI craze, which is why he was on stage at Davos with all of these morons in charge of all these chatbot companies. So we're about to watch some crazy shit that makes 2008 look tame, and we've got a crowd of Nazi monkeys running the fucking government. So, at some point, like these things that you would see as a total disaster in normal times, you think, well, fuck, at least it's gonna show people what's going on, and might actually, stop at least one horrible process to replace it with another that is financial.
Wow. I'm immersed in, I was telling you that I'm reading the essential works of Anna Politkovskaya, the investigative reporter who was murdered 20 years ago in Moscow on Putin's birthday. And I highlight everything always. And what's making me you just hear all these echoes, all these, all these worries that I have. And one of the lines is society has shown limitless apathy, and this is what has given Putin the indulgence. And I bring that up because every step of the way when Putin got into power, he pushed things, changed laws. It became the age of the oligarchs. Everything became about bribes. You couldn't do anything unless you bribed all the people, all the right people. And she tells a story about these two women who were protesting against the destruction of these rare species of ancient trees. There was nothing they could do. The elderly would just get beat up if they would show up to protest to defend these trees. And I just think about that line, society has shown limitless apathy. And I think that if everybody who cares about democracy anywhere in the world cannot show any apathy at all. And as Jason Stanley said, Minneapolis for him is where that was the beginning and where he saw a lot of hope and action. And so I just bring that word up because I want people everywhere to be thinking about what they're doing today, what they're going to tell their kids they did during this time. And I think the idea of limitless apathy being absolutely terrifying to me. And as Jim said a few weeks ago, America is not Russia. There has not been this culture of, you know, this fear and brutality, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly within certain periods and certain cultures, yes, we've had all of our sins, but you know, we've always tried to improve. And right now, what we have, as Jim said, is these fascist monkeys, and this is not the time of apathy.
I
On
said
that
Nazi
note,
monkeys, just to be
no-
clear. I want
Nazi monkeys, Nazi monkeys. That's
I
so
just you know.
so great. I'm so glad you corrected me there. That is so great. So important. Hi-Fi, go ahead. I see the finger up. Yep.
I just everything we're talking about. Um, you know, I'm kind of a big picture guy, and we go back to all the fuck ups since World War II, right? We talk about Operation Paperclip, where we brought the Nazis into our country. We didn't. I mean, fuck, we could go back to the Civil War and not actually stamping out white supremacy and allowing things like the Klan to operate.
Yeah.
But it really, if you look, let's say from the 50s, 60s, starting with the assassination of JFK, you got the Bay of Pigs thing with Russia, you got the assassination of JFK, you've got Nixon in China in the 70s, you've got organized crime, Roy Cohn, Roger Stone in with Nixon in the 70s, you've got Iran Contra in the 80s, you've got the just weird crash of the 90s, what was going on with Clinton and all that. Then you get to 2000, 2007, 2008, that crash, which we're finding out more and more was orchestrated. And now we've got Donald Trump, and, you know, we've had him in the freaking mix since, you know, 2015, 2016. And I can't take it anymore. Why do people not see this pattern of just the same ridiculous bullshit over and over, these boom and bust cycles that these idiots that we allow to take the steering wheel to sit at the helm of this country, like, fucking knock it off. And I'll tell you one thing that's going to be really, really fucking tested is America's has this mythos about our rich, our industrial barons, our Robert Barons, our billionaires. And here's one thing I have to say is if you don't see by now that billionaires are moving against the general population in a very severe way, including the consolidation of media, the installation of a surveillance state, the theft of tax dollars, the raping of public lands, the oil consortium that is just, I mean, we're bombing Iran to drive up oil. What the fuck, man?
Okay?
Anyway, I'm going to stop. I'm pretty high, but Jesus Christ, people.
Wow.
Jim and I were just gassing you like we do, but no, actually, thank you for that. It's always great to be reminded. Like I said, we can't memory hole any of this, and it's always really important to.
Can I just back up what he was saying?
Yes.
I wrote something earlier, which is that in the limit, capitalism is just a proxy for psychopathy. Now, that doesn't mean I'm like, you know, went communist or whatever. I said in the limit, right? And the problem is that when you start taking the rules away from it, it moves toward the limit inexorably. And as you get closer to it, it becomes a spiral. And unfortunately, that is literally the spiral we're in. We are in a predatory, patrimonial, kleptocratic spiral that in a lower sort of architected society would lead to a totally failed state, like a Libya or a Somalia or some shit like that. In America, what they're trying to do is do all the same things without destroying the labor infrastructure and the resources and all of that, and come in with this Palantir fucking, you're going to be an ex member and whatever the fuck techno fascist, idea is, but it all starts, as Hi-Fi was alluding to, the fact that ultimately when your society stops paying attention, in technocratic terms, stops regulating itself.
Yeah.
Right. Just like a human has to regulate their emotions, right? You have to regulate the emotions of capitalism. Otherwise, it goes fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Which is where we are now, spending $1
Yeah.
billion a day
Yeah.
to murder school kids.
Yeah. 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 And every single way in an information war, we are in the great propaganda wars, and every single way that will be weaponized by anybody who shows any empathy. I was told on Twitter.
Empathy is satanic. That's what Doug Wilson said.
What's that?
Doug Wilson said, Pete Hegseth's pastor said empathy is satanic.
Oh, yeah. Well,
He's the guy who was preaching to the generals in the fucking Pentagon.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's, man, there's so many parallels between what I'm reading in this book I just referenced and what's happening today, the things that Hegseth is doing, the things that he is saying. When Putin took the reins, he said, now the military is going to be able to be manly again. It's going to be a rebirth of maleness. They'll be able to do whatever they want. And that's exactly what happened. Hegseth did the same thing. It's like these people work from a playbook, and it freaks us out because unless we read history, which does teach us what could possibly happen, it all seems so aberrant, but it's not. These are people working toward goals that are very specific and very cruel and dangerous. I was told on Twitter, by not supporting Trump's illegal war in Iran, that makes me pro, abuse of people. And it's like, no, I don't have to support him. I don't have to support him building his concentration camps or, encouraging his brown shirts to shoot people in the face in America. I don't need to support this man. He's not about human rights. He's not going in there because he gives a shit about human rights. So no, I don't have to support it. I can be against abuse, pro women's rights, and still hate Donald Trump. And I do. So I had to get that off my chest. But go ahead. One of you, either of you.
There are no good sides in this conflict. None.
Yeah, the terrorists
No,
are on all the sides.
and this is
Yeah.
what Robert Mueller was telling us about in that speech
Well,
when he talked
also,
about mafia,
weird how
governments.
Russian aligned, countries are at war. So,
We can get some clips, right?
yeah, so that's where I was going from here. We had spent last week, which was, gearing up. We were preparing for shows where we were talking about the fourth anniversary of the large scale Russian invasion into Ukraine. We never want to ever take our eye off what's happening in Ukraine and what we can do for Ukrainian people. And so we had Dr. Marci Shore on as one of those interviews. She wrote an incredible book called The Ukrainian Night, where she documents voices from revolution, which she did in documenting voices from 2014 in Ukraine. And she is just, one of just the beacons for me in this war. So let's go ahead and hear from her.
Journalists keep asking me, is there any going back? I mean, both with respect to Trump and the United States, and with respect to Russia and Ukraine. No, there's no going back. I mean, history only goes forward. But that doesn't mean that we're stuck in this moment forever. It doesn't mean that we don't eventually come out on the other side. And Serhiy Zhadan, the extraordinary Ukrainian writer, originally from the Donbass, very much based and associated with Kharkiv, just gave a talk at the Munich conference. Last week, was it? Perhaps last week, 10 days ago, something like that. And he talked about time and how war fractures time. And he said, it's a mistake for us to think that there's any going back, that the war is this kind of nightmarish pause and then we return to how things had been. There is no going back. That world is over. That world has been shattered. That world has been destroyed. That world is not coming back. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be something better or there's not going to be something happy on the other side. But we have to understand the break in time, and we have to not idealize the past, and we have to think about what it's going to mean to move forward and come out on the other side. And I think that's right.
I think she's brilliant and I love her. Let's see the second clip.
I do still have this feeling that we are sleepwalking and that Europeans are sleepwalking. And one of the reasons I'm continually drawn back to Ukraine, there are various reasons I'm drawn back to Ukraine. And I should first say I'm generally a coward. It's not like I'm so brave that I keep crossing the border into a country that's in a state of war. I'm generally very cowardly. But there is something very seductive about being there now. Both, to support my friends, as an act of solidarity, as moral support, and that means a lot to me. But also intellectually, you feel like Kiev feels to me like the only European capital where people are not sleepwalking, where I feel like where people have a sense of what's actually happening. And the thinking is so sharp there. I feel like you can feel your mind being pushed because people are not sleepwalking. They're not in this daze. So much of 20th century philosophy was actually about how to wake ourselves up from sleepwalking.
Yes, I would say waking yourself up from sleepwalking is the opposite of limitless apathy. Gentlemen?
Yeah. I don't know. I always feel really dumb after listening to Marci.
She's so great. She's so great. The
Like,
interview.
I don't know how to improve on Dr. Shore's commentary because this shit is just
Yeah.
it's spot on, and part of what it is to be constantly watching this stuff and paying attention to it is to at least have a better sense of how serious this
Yeah.
situation is. But when there's fucking bombs going off,
Yeah.
when your friends are getting blown up,
Yeah.
walking to the store by fucking drones, you don't have the opportunity to retreat into whatever zone of bullshit that you've allowed yourself to be committed to. And it's also again, when bombs are going off, it doesn't matter what your fucking TV says, right?
Yeah.
That
Right.
is
Yeah.
that is the great equalizer ultimately, and it's part of the reason, for example, that I think Minneapolis, that whole thing, speaking of which, woke not just Minneapolis up, but a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't leave that. You couldn't escape a dead man getting shot
Yeah.
9 more
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
None of that was escapable,
Yeah.
and neither was the "fuck you, we're still nice, but fuck you" attitude
Yeah.
of Minneapolis, which was just incredible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think the again, the good news to derive is that underneath all of the apathy is a sleeping giant. I don't mean to be corny or Pollyanna,
No, it's
but
great.
when the shit hit, like, these guys, I don't think have thought this all the way through, and depending on how bad this gets, the retribution is going to be wild.
It's pretty bad. On that note, this is a perfect place to see the third clip from Marci Hi-Fi.
And I see that there are all sorts of ways we do that now. We get distracted by insane conversations or technicalities or, debates about, legal points about genocide. And then we don't look at atrocity as atrocity. We lose somehow what should be that immediate visceral reaction when you see a child being buried under rubble, that this is evil. And that all of these other distracting things are just ways in which we allow ourselves to sleepwalk and not actually see the thing that's in front of us. So much now, often when I talk to journalists about what's happening in the United States, and I'm not in the United States, but after these murders in Minnesota, various journalists, European journalists, Canadian journalists, were saying, what happened? I don't understand what happened. And I said, okay, I'm happy to talk to you about this. But really, just as well as I do what happened. We're all watching the same news. I have no special intelligence that you don't have. So let's see. We just watched on a residential street in broad daylight a guy with a mask fire 3 bullets into the head of a 37-year-old mother who had just dropped her child off at school, who had no intention of harming anyone. With no provocation for no reason. We just watched him murder her with impunity in front of our eyes. And then we watched the highest levels of the American government justify that and say it was perfectly okay. Clearly, she was a terrorist. Now, you know that just as well as I do. But if you need me to tell you to somehow shake us into actually seeing the thing that we've all just seen, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But really, we've all just seen it.
Exactly. Fucking exactly. But again, how that works, right? Is it happens, Kristi Noem, domestic terrorist, obviously, and what happens? You get these people who all of a sudden have the same opinion immediately, right? And that whole infrastructure of deciding things for people, getting those instant, we collectively, unfortunately, are having to develop an immunity to this kind of information. I mean, as you know, Heidi, better than anyone, X or whatever the fuck it is, right, is just bullshit. It's just like swimming around in total bullshit 100% of the time, and finding these kind of strands of people that still kind of make sense, right?
Yeah.
It's remarkable. And unfortunately, and there are signs actually that we might be okay, that it's possible for us to learn this, is that we have to swim around in this shit and be able to figure out what's really going on anyway.
Yeah. Exactly.
And sadly, it's a test we're all having to go through the hard way, and we failed it in 2024. But I think maybe if we come out the other end of this, we'll be able to say and look at it very scientifically and say, look, we have to treat information and the way that we treat people's brains
Yeah.
with the same kind of care that we treat our water,
Yeah.
right? Although, they want to probably make lead pipes great again or
Yeah.
whatever.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
I do.
So,
Uh,
anyway, kudos, Marci, always.
Yeah, man. So high fidelity, because the first three clips were so amazing. I think we may as well see the next one. This one's her response to a question Hi-Fi asked her.
Well, yeah, I was just going to kind of interject that, like,
Go for it, Hi-Fi.
World War III is not completely fought with guns and bombs. It's fought
Yeah.
with voter data. Like Ohio just handed over every single piece of voter data
Oh,
over to the federal government.
oh.
What
What
we
could
know
go
about
wrong, Hi-Fi?
what could go wrong? What could go wrong? It's not like Brad Parscale is running an op fucking 7 miles down the road from me.
Not
Oh, he
good.
is. That's right.
Oh, that's not
Damn.
good.
Brad
I mean,
Parscale. Is that
yeah,
guy,
he's
that guy
he's
still
literally
around?
right
Blast
down the
from the
road from me, dude.
past.
I should go
Is he?
say hi just to be like, hey,
Do you
Brad,
hear
I
him
fucking hate you.
in his shorts and with his beer, like?
Well,
I
see
remember
that?
that.
You guys remember that? Well, here's the thing
Yeah.
is he started freaking out that it was over. He thought he was being arrested for crimes against America. He thought
Yeah.
they finally caught on to his treason.
I was really
Right?
hoping that little Jesus boy, that big tall Jesus boy, would actually grow a conscience and be the first to say, "Yeah, we worked with the Russians.
Brad
Yeah,
Parscale?
yeah, I
Wow,
did.
that was some.
Oh,
I
we,
used
we
to,
already know he worked with the Russians because
I,
what did Paul Manafort hand over?
I used to run
Voter
my.
fucking data.
I just always thought he could be the weak link. He could be the guy who finally cracked and gone to conscience.
Are
And
you
I think
telling me I should go bring Brad Parscale to Jesus and have him like
I do, because I think that time when he did get drunk and his wife
mission
had
accepted?
cops, I honestly think
Challenge
that was
accepted.
the moment.
Absolutely.
That was actually the moment that they could have brought him in and said, "Look, you got to talk." If Inspector Morse had been on the job, this would be all over. We wouldn't even be here anymore. You get one good detective who just, puts it to him straight, and it didn't happen. But yeah, high fidelity. I say you do a door knock, do a, go ask Brad how he's doing, and see if he'll turn on these people. You need to start with one. That's the whole thing. You got to get the defection going. But right now, I guess everybody's too scared or making too much money or whatever it is. But Christy No just got promoted, so I think that's really interesting.
Ooh, that I have another question, and this is for chat. This is for everybody. Hey, now that
Christy No got promoted.
She got an Avengers
now
job.
that Senator Mark Wayne Mullethead is going to be in the DHS,
Yeah. Used to work
does
one
that
is.
mean that Oklahoma has to have a special election now to replace him?
Oh, I
What's
don't
going on
care.
with
I
that?
don't think any of it matters. Like special elections,
I mean, I'm pretty sure they got him from special education.
Well,
And,
no
as anyone, I mean,
Look,
no
he's an
dis-
MMA fighter. He has
Is
traumatic
anybody-
brain injuries.
has anyone seen this man talk?
I don't think that matters. I think that's part of the job requirement.
No, I know,
It's part of
but
the skill set.
well, okay, but he's all right.
Yeah.
You're
When you
right.
have
I mean,
you have a regime of Nazi monkeys.
but Christy Nome is literally, and I mean this sincerely, like 3 times smarter than Mark Wayne.
Oh God, that's why they had. That's why they had to get rid of her.
She's a fucking moron, but she's calculated in a. She's got like it takes some some planning to get a fucking air fuck palace with your boyfriend.
Were you the one who said,
Right.
"Does Corey Lewandowski come with the job?" Like, are you the one that said, "Does?"
I said that Corey Lewandowski stepped down to spend more time with his pegging. That's what I said.
And on that note, we're going to watch another clip. This was me asking
I
Marci
apologize,
about World
Marci.
War
You're
III.
right. I apologize.
It's felt to me like World War III from the beginning. But, again, that's my lens as a historian and, as somebody who has a deep sense of catastrophism. I had this terror back in 2014 with the little green men, the illegal annexation of Crimea, the instigation of the war in the Donbass. And as a historian, I kept hearing Neville Chamberlain go back to London um, in September 1938 and say, how horrible, fantastic it would be if we were trying on gas masks and digging trenches on behalf of a quarrel in a faraway country between people about whom we know nothing. And as I watched the beginnings of that war in the Donbass, and I watched Russia instigate that war in the Donbass, I thought, this is that quarrel in the faraway country between people about whom we know nothing that is going to be the beginning of the Third World War. And I have not been able to shake that feeling. But again, for me, it's very visceral.
Right. No, that great question and great response. I always hear, Neville Chamberlain in his piece for our time, as I always hear this talk of peace, and we know how peace continues to be weaponized, and we don't have, envoys meeting with Putin. These are crime bosses, and these are the things, the better words that we learn from the incredible guests that we interview.
This is the
I'm
mob. This is really,
yes,
it's right out of Arendt's Origins of Totalitarianism, where she talks about the mob coming out in the historical stage and leading the masses. That the liberals falsely believe that when the masses come out in the historical stage, they're going to have been schooled by the liberals. But no, in fact, it's the mob, who manages to seduce them. And this is the world ruled by the gangsters. I've been watching the expose of the Epstein files, and you run out of words.
Boom. More booms from
the
Dr.
word
Shore. Boom, biddy, boom, boom. It's the fucking mafia. First of all, it's literally the mafia.
yeah.
Right? Like,
The Brahma.
actually, the Russian mafia, let's be honest, the Jewish mafia, Shabbat, all of that shit is all up in this stuff.
The Italian mafia.
The Italian mafia as well. That's been, all that shit's been going on for forever. Although, and one of the strange things you get is this weird crossover between like FBI directors representing mafia bosses, representing the Russians,
And PayPal mafia.
it's very strange kind of crossover that happens between different mafias and many of our own law enforcement professionals over the years. The good news is that Mark Wayne Mullen has no experience with law enforcement of any kind except being arrested because he's a fucking psycho. So we, at least we don't have to worry about that.
I'm not as comforted.
I'm sorry.
I'm not as comforted by the incompetency aspect as Jason Stanley is. He says that because of these being the worst people who only have to show fealty to the leader, that there's an in there. And I'm not so sure, but I hope that you are right, Jim. And I hope that Jason Stanley is correct. And when he brought up the loyalty and the incompetency, Jason Stanley said, I mean, like cash, but they didn't go on to, he's like, I mean,
exactly. And I've talked about this, but that's briefly. Dictator's dilemma is a real thing that has brought down many Idi Amin, Gaddafi, all of these guys got stuck in the dictator dilemma. And what that is a narcissist, a personalist dictator surrounds himself with sycophants and morons and incompetence.
Yeah.
And convinces himself that reality is what these people are telling him, which he tells them what he wants them to tell him. They tell him, and then he goes, amazing, see how powerful I am. And the problem is that they fuck up, and then he lies about it, and then they fuck up again, and they lie to him about it, and then he doesn't know what's real, what isn't. All I see is the bombs are dropping. Right? If you look at the White House Twitter account, it's like video game footage.
I know.
It's like SpongeBob and video games and shit. Like, fucking, like, you know what I mean? So to them, it's all just a giant ass video game. And the problem with that is, you morons are fighting with Persia.
Yeah.
I need people to get this, right? Pete Hegseth thinks that fucking Persia is a video game, right? All of these morons think that a civilization that's been there for 5 millennia is going to become a puppet state to Donald Trump overnight, like Venezuela or whatever, which didn't actually do any of that. It just, he literally bullied them with the entire military to give up 50 million barrels of oil. That was it. That was the whole thing. This one's different. This one's way different. And they have no idea what they've done. This war will go on for a generation.
Oh no. Oh no. I'm going to jump in just real fast. If you've studied anything about Persian history, Arab history, the history of the Middle East, like going back into the BC era, if there's one thing you will learn, those cats know how to hold a grudge. One generation, you'll be lucky if it's one generation.
No,
you'll
I
probably
know.
have like 100.
I mean, like, in fucking conflict, right? Like, yes, that is the point. You're right. Is that they don't think that way. They don't think in terms of now. They've been planning for this for decades.
All I know is that
Decades.
one of the reasons that wars don't end is because the people who start them profit off of them and do not wish them to. So I'm reading that about the Second Chechen War and Anna Politkovskaya's book, that Putin did not want to end that war because there were too many cronies making too much money selling really bad tinned meat to the army. So it's just a lot of factors at play, and I think we've done a pretty good job of discussing what we know so far. I think that's our hour. Is there anything that happened that we didn't mention that we should have, or are we just going to have Hi-Fi pick a song? Yes. Oh, by the way, Hi-Fi, I forgot to tell you, everybody loved your Primus last week. I know it wasn't Primus, but everybody loved the music, and Jen G in particular wanted me to thank you, and I forgot.
It was what was it? The Claypool Lennon something. Yeah. That was good stuff. The one thing we didn't really talk about that I kind of wanted to just wanted to touch on real fast is, oh hey, it looks like Epstein was trafficking in ketamine and ecstasy and club drugs and who do I know famous that's really into ketamine?
Some of Elon Musk's favorite friends.
Right. Anyway, this whole thing just look, it's organized crime. It's taking over the globe.
It's icky.
Sorry, what was that?
Maybe that's what Kung Fu practice was about.
It's icky. Oh yeah, Jim, you had to.
Everybody was
confetamine practice.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is
I
what
don't
happened.
think about
Gotta
it.
leave wanting more. Not
I mean, there's a solution to all that, and just America isn't mature enough to discuss it, which is just,
here we Here we go.
Let's be honest. At this point in time, I think we figured out that drugs aren't going away. So the only thing you can do is take control of them, secure the supply
I thought you were
chain.
going to take more of them.
No, regulate their use. Keep a watch over the people who use them for signs of addiction, abuse.
All right.
Okay.
We don't need.
All right. Anyway, sorry,
Sorry.
going off on my thing. Again, we're not mature enough for this conversation, and it should.
I'm
Anyway.
definitely sure enough for this conversation.
All right. Hey, listen, final thoughts.
Yes.
Let's get out of here. Final thoughts is
I thought that was okay.
no. That was just me going off on the Epstein thing.
Deep thoughts.
As long as shit's criminalized, there's going to be a black market for it. Anyway.
Deep thoughts.
Yeah. It's just, look, it's pretty, by this point, it should be pretty obvious and pretty simple.
It's gnarly.
We've got Russia blowing up package planes all over the place. We've got operatives running loose.
Providing targeting information
to
the IRGC. Like, that's
it's gnarly. It's gnarly. Gnarly.
So, welcome to World War III, the stupidest internet war. And I'm going to leave the final word to a young man named Phil Harmonic, because I think he says it pretty damn well.
Mama said I'll never get down. Be prepared when the time get hard. You're the man of your house now. Don't you ever let the hate in your heart. Just know that you're a vessel and a lot in a place that's dark. How sacred is a temple? Every demon's never their part. Women shot through the windows, but couldn't ever see the sunshine. Through the cracks where the plants grow, praying to the Lord for some good times. I should've listened to my kinfolk when they told me that the world is frightening. I guess I go where the wind blows and hope to know when the time is right. So choose which side you're on. You better choose. Tell me which side you're on. Would you tell me? Choose which side you're on. What if I told you there's no side at all? Let me show you how to get down. In this life, love is all we need. You might not understand now. Just know the truth will set you free. I can tell you haven't seen much. I can tell you about the way you trust in the things you haven't seen yet. But just know that there's never enough to choose which side you're on. You better choose. Tell me which side you're on. Would you tell me? Choose which side you're on. What if I told you there's no side at all? Draw a line in the sand now. That's the only way to stand your ground. Never let the fears cast out. Intuition never follows the crowd. Every dawn is a new day to seize before the daylight fades. Like the earth bursts through the midnight for the marvel at the light that shines. All along they've all been plotting from the tower as they watch us, crushing grapes in all their vineyards. The time's arrived for every prisoner to cross the river out of Egypt as the plague desolates the region.